Aron is running for Maryland State Delegate District 30A here in the Annapolis area. Aron, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting my interview on our show. So I wanted to talk to you, a little bit about your past, your experience, what you bring to the table as a delegate candidate, and then really why you decided to throw your hat into the race.
Well, I mean, I spent I think a lot of people know I spent most of my time as an enlisted Marine, and then as a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and as a Marine officer, 25 years of my career. I spent a lot of time overseas, 7 years of my career, 10 operational deployments, and some of the best times I had in the military were actually right here back in Annapolis as a midshipman first, and then teaching at the Naval Academy for a couple years in the political science department. And when I chose to retire after that, I looked back and said, where do I want to retire to? What place did I love most out of all that time that I spent moving around with the military? And it was an easy answer, coming back here to Annapolis. I've been a public servant my entire life. Serving in the military gave me an opportunity to travel the world and really appreciate, I think, what we have back here. And at some point along the way there, especially in the last couple of years, I started becoming very frustrated with what I saw going on in politics, not just at the national level, but even at the state and the local level. And when I look back at Annapolis, I saw a Republican mayor, I saw a Republican governor, a Republican county executive, and one of two delegates he's Republican as well. And I called a guy named Senator John Astle and asked him how I could get involved in local government, because I met him when I was living here. And John invited me down for lunch, and by the end of that lunch, I had agreed to help him with the city as a city manager if he'd won a mayor's race against a guy I'd never actually heard of named Gavin Buckley. Well, John ran that a valiant effort against Gavin in the primary, and when he lost that, I helped John endorse Gavin. And then Gavin was kind enough to co-host my kickoff event about 4 months ago to get after this seat and try to flip a red seat to blue against Herb McMillan.
So what are you running on, Aron? What's the most important things you think for Annapolitans? What do you think's wrong with Annapolis right now? Or I don't want to say necessarily wrong, but what do you think's affecting Annapolis?
Yeah.
And then how do you plan to fix it if elected delegate?
I mean, I think first and foremost in all of our mind is this water behind us. I think that we need to do a better job of protecting the environment. That starts with strengthening the Forest Conservation Act, definitely. We need to have a real no net loss policy in this state to protect the trees that we have, because the trees are filtered water that make it into this bay. We need to be careful about how water is running into this bay as well, and we need to be very cautious about the effects of carbon in our environment, because it's creating climate change. Climate change is man-made and it's real, and we've been kicking this can down the road for way too long for our kids. So that's one issue that I'm very focused on, is us doing
the environment.
Our part. Yeah. Education is another huge one. Education is a great equalizer for our kids. And I think that in this city in particular, we have an issue. Our schools are segregated right now. A lot of our schools are segregated. Eastport Elementary is 13.5% white. Georgetown Elementary is 6.5% white. And I was told the other day that Tyler Heights didn't have a white student in it. And I think that is ridiculous when you look at the affluence that we have here and the integration of the rest of our community. Why are our schools like that? And it goes back to the civil rights movement and some white flight that we had here to private schools and now to some charter schools as well. But we have to address that either through districting, or we have to address that directly through trying to affect the integration, the mix within our schools in other ways. And I think that we need to spend some time paying our teachers a fair wage. I believe in the Kerwin Commission's finding that we don't pay our teachers enough, and us freezing pay here in this county for a better part of 5 years. We need to undo that and rectify that, because right now we're paying teachers with more experience less money than the teachers we're hiring in, and we're losing talent out of the teachers in this county. We need to look at benefits and teacher salaries, or we're gonna be in a real dire straits here in the next couple of years.
One of the things that you've come against Betsy DeVos multiple times. You even wrote an op-ed about her, correct, in the Capital Gazette.
I did.
So what is not only your problem, but a lot of people's problems with Betsy DeVos?
Yeah.
And how are you going to overturn what she's trying to do, not only in Maryland but across the country?
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of discussion about the privatization of our public schools. First of all, Betsy DeVos is way off base by heading up an investigation into our school safety without actually looking at guns in our schools and the effects of guns in the safety of our kids in schools. But in particular on this issue, this is a discussion about whether or not we should be moving towards privatizing our public schools. And in my opinion, when you privatize a school system, when you put public money in the hands of private companies, then it becomes about profits, and the losers are our kids. And the statistics, and I cited that in the op-ed that I wrote as well, the stats aren't great on public charter schools in particular. And this is the tool that a lot of the national Republican Party advocates of privatizing our schools are using to privatize our schools by deregulating public charter schools. Now, the public charter schools we have here in Maryland are actually all pretty good, especially here in Anne Arundel County, but they are because of the regulations we have in place that make them, force them to maintain state standards for admissions, discipline, testing, as well as teacher certifications by keeping the unions there as well. And I think that the best defense we have against that is to make sure that we maintain unions in our schools and maintain those state standards in our schools.
Got it. All right, so we had environment, education.
Sure.
What else we got?
We spent a lot of time in this community talking about the marginalized community in Annapolis. I'm talking about the 30% African American, 10% Hispanic in the community, and in particular, the fact that such a high percentage of that lives in our affordable housing. We have some of the worst affordable housing here in the country, and we have some of the most inequitable situations for people that are living at the cusp of subsistence level in this city. Which again, it makes you ask a lot of questions, because we have all of this affluence around us, and we have people living just within a few blocks of us that really have almost no opportunity at all. That has everything to do with access to affordable health care, which we've been discussing quite a bit in the state, especially at the national level, and the effects here on the state level. Access to quality job training, transportation to that job training, and transportation is meant to be a subsidy for people that don't have good means of transportation on their own. And I think we need to change that narrative here, because people are always asking why our transportation systems aren't profitable. They're not meant to be profitable. They're meant to serve people that don't have access. After-school programs, childcare programs for families, especially single-parent families as well. All of that works its way into that other discussion about affordable housing as well. And we need to spend less time focused on the buildings and more time focused on the people in those buildings and how to help them come up a third, fourth generation subsidized way.
What do you make about what's going down on our southeast-southwest border?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't have that same problem in Maryland where people are trying to cross the border, right? But I mean, what's your stance on immigration in Maryland? Is Maryland, should Annapolis be, and should all of Maryland be a sanctuary state? What is your stance on immigration?
Well, I don't necessarily think that it's our job to work for the federal government to enforce what they're trying to do, but at the same time, we have to respect our laws and enforce our laws. I'm very concerned about this Trump administration in particular, and really their attempts to vilify immigrants in this country across the board. The most recent stuff that we've been seeing on TV, where essentially I think our president is holding kids hostage away from their parents right now to try to get money for a wall. That is the most absurd thing that I've actually seen come out of this administration. We've seen a lot of absurd things come out of this administration, but I'm furious about it, and there's something we need to come together as a country behind young parents that through no fault of their own, sometimes they're looking for asylum or looking for a better opportunity, come across the border, and now we're taking a child out of its mother's arms. I think it's reprehensible, and we need to stop it. As far as here in Maryland and this discussion about sanctuary city, I don't think that our police officers, our city police, should be playing INS, in seeking out whether or not somebody's here illegally or not here illegally. If we come across somebody that's not supposed to be here, I mean that's a law enforcement issue. But whether or not we're actively looking for these people in raids and other things, I'm not here to do Donald Trump's bidding. I don't want our police force necessarily working directly for him either.
Understood. Last question here. I wanted to bring up something totally different than just policy. I mean, we've talked about your stance on environment, education, immigration. Let's talk about election 2018, especially in Anne Arundel County in the state. Yeah. So obviously politics, it can get ugly, and it sucks that it can get ugly, but that's kind of the world that we live in right now. And until hopefully, the Trump administration, learns to work with everybody, and we learn to work with everybody and love everybody, and it's just going to stay the same.
Yeah.
But for people inside the same party that's claimed to support the same party, to be fighting, and I'm talking about this on a national level, I'm talking about this at a local level. Yeah. How can we trust elected officials like yourself or anybody who's running for, senator, Congress, city council, county council, whatever, to be able to get anything done with Democrats or with Republicans if they're running as a Republican, if they can't even get along with people in their own party? How are you going to do that? How are you going to get along with people in your own party, but also with Republicans and work together at a bipartisan level to be able to get things done?
I've talked about this before, but there was an interview with a guy named Joe Biden that most people have heard of. And they stuck a microphone in his face right as he was about to step down as Vice President of the United States. And he was swearing in Chris Van Hollen as a U.S. Senator. And somebody asked him, "What do you miss about being a U.S. Senator yourself?" And he said, "I miss the day when people used to question each other's judgment and not their intentions." And I think we need to get back to a time when we used to actually be able to look each other in the face and in the eye and disagree with each other and not vilify the other side, whether that be within our own party or across the aisle as well. And we have been doing that worse and worse for a very, very long time. And I think that it's a result of the districting that we have. We create polarized districts with safe districts. If your party is going to win by a 10-point margin or more, then you're not running for the middle when you're in the general election. All you're doing is trying to win your party, and that tends to be to win the extreme ends of your party. So I think redistricting reform is something that we absolutely have to look at as well. And I absolutely think that we need to get the money out of our politics, because in the end, who's actually speaking for us is the people that are giving us money so that we can stand up in front of a television or get on the radio or put all these mailers, and it's their agenda that's speaking for us instead. And we should be spending more time knocking doors like I have done for the last 4 or 5 months.
So you believe independent? What do you think the answer to the gerrymandering issue is here in Maryland? Is it an independent redistricting commission to come in?
I think that Maryland absolutely needs it. We're sitting in one of the most gerrymandered districts in the country, in the 3rd Congressional District.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure I have a lot of friends up in Northwest Baltimore with having something in common with them, but I'm not sure that we're voting on the exact same issues.
Absolutely.
And that the district snakes all the way down here into Annapolis, and it should. And we should have contiguous borders and have some semblance of understanding of who our neighbors are and that we're voting alongside them on the same issues.
Aron, he's running for Maryland State Delegate District 30A here in the Annapolis area. Make sure you guys get out there and vote. Primary elections are on June 26th, just right around the corner. Aron, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome on any time to talk about your progress and what's going on. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Really appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.